Bueno, bueno, mi gente, saludo. Welcome to another episode of Café con Charlie. We are excited for today's episode. Of course, got my co-host, my man, Cesar de Peña in the building.
Going
Cesar,
on,
what
guys?
is good in the hood today, brother?
Nothing much, can't complain. Got a special guest today, one of my good friends, Jonahs Duran. So I'm excited for that.
Jonas, what's good, brother?
What's going on, my people? Mi gente, como
Mi
dice.
gente. Love it. I love it. We got Massachusetts, we got Miami, and we got Arizona up in here. So
Yep.
we're going to figure out a
All
way to give,
across right now.
heck yeah, we're going to give back. You know what I mean? So,
For sure. So
Cesar,
real
kick it
quick,
off, brother.
the reason why I chose Jonas to come on the podcast is because I feel like we all have something in common, a lot of things in common, to be honest. And it's one, we've all moved out of Lawrence. I'm back here, but I'm about to make the move. Charlie, you've done the same thing multiple times, and Jonas actually has moved from Lawrence to Texas and then is relocated to Miami currently, which is cool. So we have that in common. We all have entrepreneurial aspirations in all different fields, and then we got Jonas, we're all in the fitness game. We all have gone through a fitness journey. So I'm looking forward to talking about that, getting to know what Jonas has going on with his agency, which we'll get to that later. And then kind of just, chop it up.
Heck yeah. Jonas,
So,
I checked out your IG page a little bit and in your website. I see, yo, brave soul. You titled right there, front and center, entrepreneur. Tell me a
yeah.
little bit more about that. Tell me about that journey. Tell me how you got there. Have you ever done the corporate world? And tell me, a little bit of where you're at and where you're going.
No, for sure. Yeah, my entrepreneur journey is a little bit untraditional. Or I should say there's really no traditional entrepreneur journey. I do come from a corporate background, mostly sales, telecommunications, the big wigs, Verizon, the AT&Ts. And that's pretty much where I was at, those customer facing jobs, commission pretty cutthroat. And at some point, I've always been in love with technology. But at some point, I discovered web development, kind of just hobbying around, a little bit of interest. At one point, I pretty much just started saying, like, hey, I just made the switch, like, hey, I make websites. And what started as, talking to friends and family, next thing you know, referrals were coming my way. And it came from like, hey, I said I'd do it. Now it's time to do it. So I put myself first before I really learned the skills, which was really, I don't recommend to most people. It really takes a whole level of courage and like determination to kind of rise up to the occasion. But with that said, no regrets there. That's really what started it off. Just starting a couple of projects here, a couple of projects there. Before I knew it, I really had a client list going. And then the passion really started becoming income. And that's really where I made the switch of like, this is really a career. I could really do this. And that's where I kind of started. I didn't leave my 9 to 5. I kept going with the 9 to 5. But then I really realized that I can craft my way. I can really make a path instead of a traditional path, going to school, doing what I have to do, climbing the career ladder. There's really an opportunity here. And obviously, we're all well versed with the digital world, podcasting, content creation. And while all of that seemed kind of far off, it's not impossible. And, these small websites that were just little projects at the time have kind of evolved and grown into bigger things. So it's been a really interesting journey.
Jonas, to
Yeah.
backtrack real quick, talk to me
Yeah.
about your journey in learning the skill set of web development. Was that something you went to school for, self-taught? Like, how was that process?
So a little bit of a mix. So originally, I say self-taught really because what I did was a 10-week course in Boston at it was basically a coding boot camp, and they had a front end course. You pay a couple $1,000. They teach you the absolute basics. Anyone who's well versed with technology and this whole world, you can't learn everything you need to learn in 10 weeks.
Yeah.
So while those 10 weeks were kind of like my base, from there, everything was self-taught. And when you say self-taught, I like to say self-learned because I teach myself. I have a lot of teachers, but the number one thing is YouTube University, which we're all well versed in.
For sure.
The amount of free resources or low-cost resources out there are really what got me through it, to learn skills.
Yeah, and even free, because you can learn anything you need to on YouTube. Literally, it's
anything
the
for
only thing
free,
I always say
anything.
is all the information is there. You have to do the due diligence to compile the right stuff. But
Yep.
if you know what you're doing and you know, like at least put together a curriculum for yourself, you can definitely get it done, which is a testament because
Yeah.
you've done that.
And
You know?
I think that's the one thing, looking back, and it kind of just going into what I'm currently doing.
Yeah.
But looking back, the one thing I just wish I had somebody, obviously I wish I was more vocal of finding someone, a mentor of any kind, or someone who was at least a couple years ahead of me, just
Mm-hmm.
because of what you just said is that curriculum. There's so much information, and that's the one downfall of so much free information out there is it's a lot, and you don't know what's relevant, you don't know what's worth learning, what's on
Yeah.
its way out, because these things move very fast. So I'll be the one thing is if I could go back and I could find somebody who is in my, or even my position right now and say, you know what, this is what you need to learn and disregard everything else. Um, but it's not a bad thing because these are all skills. With that said, I was learning a lot and maybe it wasn't exactly what I needed to learn, but these are skills years later that I was exposing myself to entirely new income resources, to skills, that probably didn't come into play for years later, but it was an incredible kind of path.
Yeah. Question on, because I have a similar experience with photography and videography. That's pretty much I learned all of it through YouTube, and just like different courses like that. But I found, and I don't know if you can relate, when I was learning all that stuff, there got to a point where I knew everything, but I got stuck in the consumerism of, oh, this video. And then it's like the clickbait topics, 10 things you need to know before you hire a client, 10 things
Yep.
you need to do to put your business in order and all this stuff. And next thing you know, I kind of got to the point where I was like stuck just consuming and not taking action. I don't know if that happened with you at some point.
And that's one of my biggest mistakes, because you can fall into that of just like, hey, I'm gonna throw on I'm avoid the more vulgar term, but mental stimulation.
Yeah.
The mental stimulation of, oh, I'm watching a YouTube video about this topic I'm learning. This is good enough. And you throw on a podcast and maybe you talk
Mhm.
about it, you write a couple notes, and you think and you have that perception of like, hey, I'm learning, I'm making progress. When in
Yeah.
reality, if you shut off the video and someone asked you, hey, what did you just learn?
You don't know nothing.
Crickets. You retained absolutely nothing. And
Yeah.
maybe you can talk. You have a couple of talking points from what you watched, but you really retain nothing. And that was really the one of the biggest switches, like, of that action. And that's why I say it was for my path where I was like telling people this is what I do before
Hmm.
I actually knew how. Made me take action because
Yeah,
someone
because you
said,
had
"Hey, do you
projects
know
on
how
your
to make a
plate.
website? Here's the money."
Yeah.
And I'll say I'm hesitating reaching for the money. I'm taking it, but now I'm like, oh crap! I just told them this is gonna take 2 weeks. If
Yeah.
I got 2 weeks to figure it out. And little things like that, setting a deadline for yourself, taking action, um, reaching out to friends and family. I was blessed enough where I was just telling people and they were just coming my way.
Yeah.
But that's a very different
Risky
situation for
thing to
most
do.
people. It's
Yeah. It depends
risky.
on your
It's
risk tolerance. Yeah.
exactly,
Do you find
exactly.
you
And
work
also, yeah,
better with that kind of pressure, like where you're back against the wall type thing, or?
for me, 100% because it was that's what it came down to. I needed to pay bills. I was
Okay.
working multiple jobs. While I had a sales job, I was still working a security job, doing random delivery jobs, whatever to make some money. Because at that point, I was a college dropout. I thought, I don't know, I was maybe 21, 22 with like, hey, I'm a dropout. All of my friends are graduated or graduating. Um, they have corporate jobs. They have, they're way further than me. So I felt like I was a failure at that point. But I still had to pay bills. So here I am doing multiple jobs when I discovered web development. And then I realized like, oh, I can really make money off of this. And like I said, what turned into one project, I'm like, hey, you have 2 weeks to make this website. I'll turn it in and I'm done. But in those 2 weeks, I've learned more than I probably learned in a year before that.
Yeah.
And I found that to snowball all these years later of like, hey, there's a new skill that I just learned. While I might not necessarily market it to people and say, hey, world, I do this skill now. Let's say paid
Yeah.
ads. I have an internal network, whether it's Cesar or other people who our friends are like, hey, you have a business. I just started doing this skill, these paid ads. Let's run paid ads for your business at no risk to you, no risk to me, because I get to learn, I get to apply, build systems, and then I get to help out my friends. And, that's like I get to double dip in that sense, which has been really game changer.
So let me ask you this, right? Because if I want to just take you a few steps back to, you mentioned that the driving force for you, a lot of it had to do with, hey, I got to pay bills, and this is a skill set that I know, and then this is a skill set that I have people in my community or in my network that I know could take advantage of. But you turned that into a full blown business, and you ended up burning the ships from corporate, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, pretty much that was a path. I was in a corporate environment, kind of created my own experience by freelancing, by building my business. And that's when I started applying to normal tech roles, because that was the second, the real goal originally was to get hired within a tech role. That pivoted once I was making money, just from learning the one skill. I thought I needed to learn an array of them, but this one skill set was getting me paid. And from building that experience, when I went to apply for tech jobs, instead of a traditional, hey, I have a degree, or hey, I'm fresh out of school, I was like, hey, I've been doing this for 2-3 years. I have a client list. I can talk to you about web design. I can talk to you about marketing. You want to talk more technical stuff. So I eventually did break into the tech field. And I would say that was really game changer, because you just don't know what you don't know. And the company I was working at was relatively large. So I was able to be a small fish in this big pond, and really learn. It wasn't like my back was against the wall, I'm going to lose my job tomorrow. They really gave me a structure, gave me training. With that said, though, I had an entrepreneur mindset at the job. The whole time, at no point am I saying, hey, this is it. This is my last job. This is where I'm going to settle. I'm just reading the room. I'm absorbing everything. How do they do things? How do they hire people? How do they delegate? And that all that's done is just make me stronger as an individual, and I can pour that into my business. And like I said, whether it was systems or their practices, even company culture, if I noticed things that I didn't like, taking that with me and saying, I'm never going to hire someone and onboard them and make sure it's a rich experience, and vice versa. If there's someone's leaving my team, I want to make sure that wherever they're going, they have all of my support and great relationships.
So you mentioned mindset, and I want to kind of follow up on that question, because what I heard from you was you took advantage of the opportunities that were presented to you, and you saw that, in real life practice, you're going to learn far faster and far better than you're going to learn on YouTube all day, every day. And there's a leap of faith involved in that. So the young man today, or the young adult, or the grown-ass man that maybe wants a career shift, that is considering, hey, I really have a passion for this. I really want to do this, but no one knows that I do this, or whatever the case is. How do you balance your mental state, right? Because do you ever get in a moment where you're like, yo, where's the next contract going to come from? Where's the next opportunity going to come from? Am I actually really good at this? Am I going to get figured out that I'm not good at it? How do you deal with that mental aspect of it to still be moving in the direction of where you're trying to get?
Number one thing I would say is audits. You need to do a mental and business audit, is I guess the best way to put it. If we're going to separate it into categories, mental audit of, hey, what was my original goal? Where am I now? Am I going in the right direction? Am I burnt out? Am I balancing these things correctly? Because mind you, just to add some context in terms of mental state, I was still doing my full-time job while running this business. So when it comes to that, it wasn't long before I was like, oh my God, I'm super over my head. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm constantly stressed. And it's those moments where you just have to take a step, just a moment to breathe and make sure all your eggs are in a basket of like I said, what are my goals? What was my original goal? Where am I now? And then same thing with your career and your job of like, am I doing enough? Am I pushing myself? Am I asking for help? Are there any internal opportunities, those type of things. And I call it an audit because it's just the number one. You have to make sure all of these boxes are checked, that you're progressing. And then we're talking about something like multifaceted as a business. I do have a partner, which is my girlfriend. And yeah, she offered me support, mostly design, which is a blessing in itself. But there's still sales, there's still marketing. I still need to onboard clients. I need to take leads. I need to find new leads. All of these things that really don't, when you're thinking, oh, web design, and I'm sure you could relate this to any business, real estate or photography, videography. Hey, it's this one skill when you're not looking at the whole picture. You're looking at one bubble and there's 40 more bubbles that you need to fill. And if you're a one-man team or a smaller team, it becomes wearing multiple hats. And that's a big part of it too. You had mentioned it. If you're not passionate about it, because I was already originally super passionate about technology. Every new gadget, any new piece of technology, Apple released something new, I'm on it, and you really need to know yourself and like know what helps you get out of bed. Well, if you're gonna put yourself in front of a computer for 8 hours and code, but you don't care about technology, you have no interest, then you're torturing yourself. Versus I know I'm that same person. I did that for years, trying to teach myself how to code and force myself into it, and 4-hour sprints and Pomodoro method. And at some point I was like, this isn't what I want to do. I like talking to people. I like building relationships with clients. And that's what really opened my door of like, hey, I really got to lean into marketing. I really got to lean in on the sales. And yeah, I can probably start delegating some of this design work, because while it's fun and I'm good at it, and yeah, I have a partner who can do some of it too, it's much easier to pay someone else, handle it entirely. And then me become the face of my company, become the person who my clients already talk to on a daily basis. Yeah.
So why even go the route? What's your why? Why go the route of owning your own company, taking that responsibility, having to do sales, having to do lead gen, and taking rejection? Why not just stay at a corporate job that pays you a nice little paycheck, gives you what you want? What's inside of you internally that's making you want to pursue this route so aggressively?
Oh, well, really, I mean, why is how I grew up. Single mom, who was an entrepreneur herself. She was a radio host for 20 years in Lawrence. And just to kind of give you like an anecdote of like because I found it within myself and I didn't know where it came from until I did some reflecting. And this is what I can remember, my earliest memories, probably like 5, 6 years old in Lawrence, driving around. My mom leaving the radio station, I'm with her, sitting in the car, and she'll be like, hey, let's say it's a bodega, a little convenience store. The owner of this bodega owes me $500. Go in there. I'm 5 years old, 6 years old. Go in there by yourself. Go collect the check. So I'm stumbling in. I'm a kid. Stumbling like, hey, I'm looking for Ramon or whoever it is. You owe my mom a $500 check, which sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
But that was the interaction. Next thing you know, I'm going into every store, every business, collecting my mom's check. Hey, I'm here for my check. These are like early memories when I'm like looking back of like, oh, I was bred for this. My mom was an entrepreneur. She did this for years. I witnessed her do it, build this radio show by herself, market it. And obviously we're talking about way back pre-internet, basically. Well, really beginning of internet. Where radio shows were way more powerful, played everywhere, and she really got it out the mud. And I would say that mixed in with my own personality of like, hey, I'm really just that type. I'm also a go-getter. I have my own dreams. I have my own ambitions. I have big vision for my life when we're talking about vision board. And in this big vision of my life, at no point is it sitting at my desk in a cubicle at a 9 to 5, making 3% year over year. we live in a new era where there's no glass ceiling. I could make just using my own frame because we can all scale it. But a website can take me. I mean, I've systemized it, so I can make some websites in a day or two, and there's no limit to that of the amount of clients I can take on, or the amount of output or marketing that I can do. And those just multipliers, when we put that on the numbers and seeing the potential, that's all I can, that's what drives me, just knowing that it's all the work I put in now is gonna come back to me 20-fold, 40-fold, versus working for somebody else. Like, I wouldn't get even a hundredth of that. Even if I worked 40 years for it.
So, I like that. I like that a lot.
Question on your environment, since we're talking about your past, and now I want to transition a little bit to your environment. You had the privilege of getting out of Mass and going into Texas. I'm kind of curious on what did that do for you in terms of mindset? Because I know for me, you remember when I went to Florida and I came back, I was like this is it. I was preaching Florida to everybody, and now it's funny enough, 4 out of like the 6 of my boys are living there.
We're all here.
I want to know what did that do for you? Because I know for me, it was literally the pivotal step into opening my eyes into entrepreneurship, reading, all of that stuff, because I saw the different life. We come from a small town, single mothers are grinding, doing their thing. And so it's like, you don't get to see that side of the world until you get out. You see it in the movies, but it doesn't feel real until you're actually there. So curious.
That. I mean, as you just said, one thing is seeing your friends do it. We were, this is the pivotal moment. I was 18 when I first left the country ever. I went on a trip to Prague, Czech Republic. And then a week after that, I went to the Dominican Republic for the first time. These were like back-to-back weeks. I think we had just graduated. But that was my first exposure of like you just said, we grew up in 7 square miles. This is all I knew. All I knew was Hispanic people. All I knew was my own culture, my own bubble. Everything I did was within that range. So, it was beyond the culture shock, beyond like shell shock, when I traveled for the first time and see this whole different world, different languages. I would say that was the first kind of where I really got the bug of like, wow, I really need to leave. Like, I can't continue living here. Like, there's so much to see. And then I also remember you had started in Miami in school.
Yeah.
You and another friend of ours, Jonahs, and another friend of ours. There was a few of you.
Yeah.
But we were 18 and you guys were already in Florida, constantly telling us how different it is, how, completely different world. And, even though you were explaining it well, you can't really grasp that.
I remember you guys are like, but like, until we went on that first guys trip, it was like, everybody was like, I gotta be out. I gotta figure out how to get here.
Yeah. Now, that was really when I first got it. And then, growing, even years after that, working multiple jobs, I always dreamt of it. I'm like, I would love to leave Lawrence. I would love to, but I have no roots anywhere. I mean, New York and other places, but no real roots. I don't have a family really established anywhere. And then 2 things. One, we went to Miami as a group of friends of like 4 or 5 of us. And I remember we were just sitting on that balcony of the Airbnb looking at the buildings like, we could really do this. Like, we should really move here. And then the following year is when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, luckily, this is all about putting yourself in position and mindset. I had transitioned into a tech role. So when the COVID hit, I was in prime position. We went fully remote. I looked at my girlfriend and we were like, let's get out of here. It was just a conversation of like, let's get out of here. We had no real location in mind. We had visited other places like Austin, Miami. And in one, and this is funny, kind of looping back to just telling people you're going to do stuff. We were at a cookout and we had the discussion of like, hey, we want to move. Like, let's get out of here. We're at a family cookout and I just blurted out. I'm like, I'm moving to Austin. Everyone's looking around like, did we hear that correctly? I just threw it out there. Even her name's Melissa. Melissa's looking at me like, like, where are we going?
Talk about this.
It's just funny because she didn't check me there. We just gave each other a look like, and she didn't deny it. We just, we went home and we started looking. Next thing you know, we left. You know, we were gone within like, I think like 3 to 4 months. And honestly, it was like, out of any move in my life, anything I've done, anything I've learned, the number one thing I wish I did earlier was just move. Whether it was Connecticut or Ohio or whatever, obviously not as much of a return on investment, because Austin at the time was just a huge booming, especially for technology, for younger people, anybody under 40 really, fitness, you know, it was becoming the epitome of that at the time. So it was like the greatest thing I've ever done, like in terms of mindset, in terms of, I was at coffee. Let me go back a little bit. I went from, you know, at the time in Lawrence, which is, everyone has their own vices and stuff. At the time, I was just fully addicted to video games. I was probably like 255 pounds, like 40 pounds heavier than I am now, completely inactive. You know, while I did have stuff going for me professionally, the rest of my life was just in disarray. And it wasn't until I lost my support system. No more driving 5 minutes to go get food from mom's house, or calling a friend, hey, my car won't jump. You know, kind of losing that support system, being able to recreate my identity. You know, you're meeting people who don't have assumptions about you, maybe off your appearance, but nothing else. You didn't go to school with them. You don't know their cousins. You don't know their ex-girlfriends. You know, these are blank states. And I took full advantage of that. You know, introducing myself. I didn't introduce myself as my old role or what I used to do. It'd be like, hey, I'm a web developer. I'm a software engineer, you know, speaking forward into what I'm doing, what my interests are. You know, instead of partying all the time, you know, we party with friends and there's always a baby shower. There's always a quinceañera, somebody's birthday. All of that disappeared. So between Melissa and I, Friday nights, Thursday afternoons, Saturday mornings, we went to the library. We went to coffee shops. You know, we would just sit in coffee shops for 5-6 hours, reading, and not just sit there, but I'm coding, I'm building websites. She's learning how, and even for her, she put a whole new career. She was laid off. When we got to Texas, she was laid off after a couple months. You know, I told her, like, you could really do this. The same way I had the confidence and she would hype me up when I didn't have any, I returned it back and said, hey, you should study, you should get a job. And that's all we did was stay in coffee shops and grind and, you know, focus on professional development. Before we knew it, I stopped playing video games entirely. Lost, like, at the time we were getting ready for a friend's wedding, lost like 30 pounds, you know, started playing basketball, lifting again. You know, just became a totally different person. She ended up getting a new job. You know, just like super pivotal, like that year, I was in Austin, Texas. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that year and change in Austin, like, was the most transformative time of my life. Also, it was COVID. I mean, Texas didn't.
Yeah, that's crazy. You had
Texas
a lot
didn't
going
lock
on.
down, but, you know, life was different in that era. I mean, even if it wasn't locked down, like in Massachusetts or other states, people were still kind of, you know, weary of each other, and you didn't want to really go out. So there was really no better time to just like hunker down and have laser focus on what I was doing. So yeah, that move was, and honestly, that's the one thing I tell anybody. I tell my friends. I talk to Cesar about it. It just, moving out of your hometown is the most liberating, like, transformative thing you could do. You're going to be exposed to a whole new life that you wouldn't have even imagined. You know, I'm in Miami now, and even though we dreamt about it for years, I didn't know how I was going to get here. And now looking back, if I didn't do that stint in Austin where I just did nothing but work and put my head down, I don't think we would be here right now, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. And, you know, ultimately that stuff is it tends to be preparation for future obstacles coming your way, and they will come your way, and there are obstacles and opportunities, but sometimes opportunities can be hidden behind what is perceived as an obstacle. I've talked to Cesar about this a few times. I actually, when I first left Lawrence, I went to Florida with my with the mother of my daughters and our daughters, right? And it was an attempt to I grew up hella hood. Like I was in it. Like if you know it, I was in it, like through and through. Like I couldn't be in a certain part of Lawrence. I couldn't be in North unless I was ready for it, right? It was just what it
Yeah.
was. And then I had been separated from the mother of the girls for a hot minute. Like we're high school kids, right? And so Florida was an attempt to like make it work. Like, come on. Like
Yeah.
I grew up without a father. I didn't want the girls to grow up without a father. And I'd been hustling in Lawrence and doing hella good. And I was like, you know what? This shit ain't for me, man. So I like basically turned everything in, left with a wad, and headed down to Miami. The mother of the kids and my daughters lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Wow.
I woke up, I came back from work one day, they were gone, right? And I
Wow.
found myself in an apartment. For commitment purposes, I gave 6 months of rent right away, like cash, boom. And I remember I was sitting down there and I didn't have a car, right? And I'm riding the bus, dude. And I'm talking about, you want to talk about turning your shit inside out. Now, I don't have any skills really to offer, to be real with you. Like at that point, I have the internals. I have that. I hadn't read all these books. I hadn't put myself out there. What I had was the ability to work a standard, whatever job it was. But I sure as shit refused, bro. I refused to go back. I said, I don't give a shit what happens here. I'm going to stay here. And I'll tell you, one of the most difficult 18 months of my life, at least the first 9 months were really, really, really difficult in the sense of self-actualization. Who am I? What am I? Right? So all of a sudden, the link that I was rocking, not that important to me anymore because I'm still alone. The bus that I'm riding, I'm not better than nobody in here. Here you are. How do I show up for people? How do I introduce myself? So when I hear you tell this story, and this is what I was telling Cesar the other day, you can't make that shit up in Lawrence. You can't be in Lawrence or in whatever your hometown and says, I'm going to do it this way. It won't exist because of what you said a little while ago. You had mentioned your support system and all of that. And so that too, for me, is probably one of the most powerful moments of my life, was that time spent alone, which not only gave me the courage to know that I was out permanently after that. I ended up going back to Lawrence for a year and a half, which is a terrible decision on all facets. And then before I bounced. But the gist of it is that if you want to get anywhere in this world on a level that is beyond what you know right now, if you want to discover yourself, you are going to have to do some shit you have never done in your life before. You are going to have to make some sacrifices. You're going to have to change your patterns. You're going to have to change, like you said earlier, it's 5 hours in the coffee shop and it's Listen, I love your story with you and Melissa. It takes that support system. I have that with my wife. I'm not half the man I am without her being my biggest cheerleader. Bro, she's at the door with my fucking lunch bag saying, let's go get him, right?
Yeah.
It don't matter what my dream is or what my vision is, she's on it because she believes in me. But if I don't move, I don't survive in Miami for that year and a half on my own, I don't come out and move to Kansas City and start making myself into a better man, she's not going to see that potential in me because she's going to be like, you flake out at every exit. Right. So I love the fact that one, it's, you've done the work, right? I can hear it in your tone. I can hear it in your voice. I can hear it in your perspective. But that's why you have Melissa right by your side, because she believes in something. She sees the vision. And that's why you have also the ability to, and I say this for anybody that's listening to this right now, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy if you're 20, and it's not. I'm 44 years old, and I'm putting myself through the same thing right now. And this shit's hard. It's just real talk. It is hard. Why? Because anything worth anything is going to require some significant sacrifice and some significant peeling yourself inside out. So I think that leading life that way is the only way to do it, in my opinion.
No, 1,000%. And even hearing that is like, it's confirming for me because you don't know when you're taking these risks, what you're doing. And even I can talk about it now, but I didn't understand what was going on. At the time, I just lost all my friends, I lost all sense of normalcy, all the bars I used to go to, all of the parties, watching all my friends back home, doing everything. And one thing is really what you need to learn is like, at first, it's like, oh, I'm missing out on everything.
Yeah, the
Like
FOMO
here,
is
my
crazy.
friends taking shots
That's
together.
real deal. That's real talk. It's the
And
truth.
like little stuff like Cesar was
Yep.
having his kid. I was there for his gender reveal, but he had a baby shower, and we had just moved. You know how heartbreaking that is to not witness those type of things. You know, those little things at first were just like detrimental. They get you in your feelings. You're like, why am I here? You know, I don't have anything here. Why did I do this? You know, that doubt seeps in. Really quickly though, I would look around and it's November, October, and it's not freezing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
little reminders of like, I did this for something. You know, meeting a neighbor who happens to do the same thing or be a client in the future because I just hit it off with them, or meeting someone new and they're not asking me about, hey, I remember you from high school or something like that. You know, it was these little things that just kept adding up, and before you knew it, I had a whole new life where my friends, then it became where my friends are hitting me up asking me or saying jokes or talking about stuff that I didn't care about anymore. You know, and it's rewarding, but it's weird because you're talking about not Cesar. Cesar's been a great friend who's also really open-minded and looking for growth. But you have other friends who they're doing the same thing, you know, and just hearing them talk about something that you talked about 5 years ago, and you thinking of like, is this me if I didn't go anywhere?
Yeah.
You know, hearing about other friends like getting in trouble or something dumb, and it's like, oh man, like reinventing myself, like losing who I thought I was like the best decision of my life.
I feel like we're super blessed because we have like two sides of friend group where you, like you said, we have the group that you hung around with and we're like you're cool with, but then we have like that initial group of brothers pretty much that I always say I'm blessed to be able to have them because we went to high school together, so we've known each other since we were 14 all the way up till now. And that group has remained together, and then we're also just climbing up in our own path, but we're also motivating each other. We're talking about our wins. We joke around and come up with a bunch of business ideas, but I guarantee you, if we did like 3 or 4 of them, they'd probably hit. But it's just cool to have that system, and it's pretty much I could say that I'm lucky to have that because that's kind of what's kept me going in the sense where I seen you guys doing your thing, and I've had those moments where I'm like, damn, all my boys are in tech, they're all moving, and sometimes it feels like it's a weight, but then I look at it, I'm like, nah, that's motivational. When I'm seeing my boys buy a house, when I'm seeing them get a new car, when I'm seeing them get promotions and stuff like that. So I feel like it's like you said, I had those moments where when everybody was leaving, I was like, damn, I'm stuck here. And it's crazy because all my boys went where I wanted to go. And that was a huge cloud over my head for the longest time. I'm blessed now that I've pulled the plunge and I had to get extreme about it, but I literally got uncomfortable, turned in my apartment. Kirsa gave in one of her cars. We had 2 cars, we have one now. We pretty much are leaning out all of our expenses to make this move happen, which we're blessed to be able to go to Arizona. So I'm running away from the cold as well. But some at first it was like, damn, it was Florida, but you know, God works in mysterious ways. But it's awesome to be able to have that support system that motivated me to get there.
Yeah, and I think
Nah, yeah, go ahead, my bad.
yeah, and here's something, you know, I got a few years on you guys, and I look back and I reflect on some of the, on the conversations I had before I left, up to and before I left, and then thereafter. I've been gone for what 22 years now, 21 years. I left Lawrence. I think 2004. So whatever that is, what are we,
Almost
23?
20, 19.
23.
Yeah,
Yeah.
about
So
to
it's
be
almost 20 years I've been gone.
almost, yeah.
And I love I went to war with some of my homies. Like these are I mean, we're talking about things that you know how adversity brings people together. Well, like getting shot at will bring the shit out of you together, right? Things like that. And
Trauma
so
bonding.
bro, and the love is there. So
Yeah.
that's my homie. I love you. I got your back. And so sometimes you get this feeling like, man, but I'm rolling out. So maybe like you're leaving them behind, right? I always had to live with that. And I look back but you know, and I'm not a very religious cat, but I am a firm believer that we all have a gift. And that gift is something that we have a duty, a responsibility to chase down, to build up, to sharpen, and to share with the world, with the universe, right? To give back. Like Jonahs, when you have a hard time, maybe you're a little homesick or maybe you miss your homies, just remember something. Some of those homies are silently, quietly looking up and inspired by what you're doing. Cesar, it's going to be the same thing with you, homie. And so I started to live on that. I started to be like, I went from being come mierda to thinking he's too good to when I came back, it was like, listen to what Charles has to say. Listen, and so I'm a firm believer in sending that message that, look, you are responsible and your duty is to you, number one, put your damn oxygen mask on first so that you can handle your business, and you will watch and see how taking those risks, taking those, like you said, Cesar, pulling the plunge, making those brave decisions are only going to build confidence, self-esteem, experience in you. And then all of a sudden you're not just changing your life. Before you know it, you're going to be changing lives. And I'm going to tell you something, there ain't no dollar amount that can compete with that shit. And I've had personal experiences. I get personal messages from people that are trying to do a little bit better with their life. And that shit is worth every single little sacrifice that you can make on pursuing whatever it is that you guys are trying to pursue in this world.
Oh, for sure.
Perfectly said, man. Perfectly said. And, I can relate to that wholeheartedly. And I'll relate it to this. It's like little stuff of, I live in Miami. Miami's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And I've never been an avid sharer on social media. I'll post occasionally. I'll interact with friends, but I wasn't big on posting. Occasionally what would happen is I would post something, I would be having the worst day. I'll be down on my luck. Things aren't going right. But, I'll post a nice view of the skyline and I'll have somebody write to me, like, wow, what I would do to be in those shoes. Or what I would do to be there right now, while I'm having a terrible day and I'm down on my luck and whatever, I'm going through it, and I read these types of messages, and it starts like that of like, I wished I was there, and just taking a step back of perspective of like,
absolutely,
I'm so happy to be here, and also I got myself here, but I don't know how, I can't imagine how I got here, or telling me 3-4 years ago that I would be in the position I am is kind of like a surreal thought. And then just that perspective of like, someone would die to be in my position. Somebody would trade everything they have to just be in my position. And I'm talking about skylines, whatever, but you can relate it to anything. But that shift, that realization really helped me, because I'm like, you know what? Every time I do post something that I'm seeing, that I'm experiencing, it's for that reason of like, someone's gonna see this and say, you know what? I just finished studying for 3 hours. Let me study 2 more.
Yeah.
Or I just finished doing something. Let me put another hour. It's been rewarding, because you get those types of messages like, hey man, like, how do you do what you do? And being able to give resources to someone and have them follow up in 6 months and say, hey, I got a job. Like, thank you. Like a genuine thank you. Not that they owe me anything, but they went out of their way to reach out and call me, or, those are all things. And we're talking about your why. I can't think of a better reason to help people and love, and whether it's a little bit of motivation or actual actionable step that they can do to change their life. Like, those are really the best, the most rewarding things.
Oh yeah.
It's funny too, because we talk about that all the time, because I'll be the first to admit that I suffer from like coming down to reality, or like getting like grounding myself, in the sense where a lot of times I'm kind of just grinding, looking for the way to, to get ahead. And I told Charlie, it's like, I'm at war. I'm not worried about what's happening behind me. I'm just like, I got to do this. This is what I want. How do I get it? Set goals, go to the gym, sharpen the mindset. And I'm doing all of that. And sometimes I feel like I'm just in place running like a hamster. But then every time I come back and like look back, I'm like, oh shit, I got further along. The things in my vision board I accomplished. I did this. I inspired someone. Like, it was amazing to be able to do that marathon and have all of you guys there, and then seeing you guys start running. I was like, damn, that little thing. I don't know if I ever told you guys, but that little thing was like, damn, that marathon made it so much more worth it. Just the accomplishment was cool, but to be able to see then, like, I inspired some of my friends, and I know a few people on social media too that have hit me up and talked about it, like, yo, I want to start running and stuff like that. But that for me was like it made it all worth it, and it kind of puts it in perspective. Like, you can't focus so much on what you want, the material and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, you're gonna get there, and it's gonna be so unfulfilling, as opposed to the little things, those little moments that you get.
Yeah, and I love that you're sharing that, because we have talked about that a couple of times, and like I'll share with you guys, like, and Cesar, I've talked to you about this a couple of times in respects to, you work so hard and you do, life is fucking strange sometimes, guys, where it's like you have this vision in front of you and you work everything, you do everything you can do to get it, and you get there, and then your mind is like, well, wait, right? You'll shift where your mind is, right? So I'm at a place now where I couldn't be happier in my life and where I'm at, right? But I'm still living. I still got other dreams, visions, and goals. So when I get into, like, for instance, I'm kind of in burnout mode right now, right? Like, the brain is not, I'm not at like, let's go to war, let's do this. I'm more like, you know, you have to understand that shit, that seasons come and go for reasons, right? And you have to try to, so every time you do come down, right? Cesar, you said, when I come down, and you reflect on that, and you reflect on that marathon, you also must remember that you're not always going to be hyped. You're not always going to be motivated. It's not always going to go well. Sometimes it's not going to go well. Sometimes you're going to get pushed in a different direction. We don't always have the answers, but you got to keep that awareness there, that who am I? What am I made of? Have I ever quit before? Do I ever just give up and turn around? Do I ever just lay down? No, I don't do that. So let me give myself the grace right now. Let me see what the hell is going on. Why am I getting stretched this way? Why am I recovering this way? Why am I healing this way? And I promise you, bro, and I say this for myself, this is my own self-soothing too. When you can get yourself to that level, to give yourself that level of grace and that level of understanding, but then still go the next day, ain't no stopping you. Because what it is, and I use this with you all the time, I say, everybody overestimates what they can do in 1 year and underestimates what they can do in 10. Keep that shit in focus, right? Make sure I'm a victim with comparing, right? Man, this dude's been in the business for 4, I've been in it for 5. This dude's killing it, and I'm over here messing around. But then you don't know what's the home life like, what's the debt like, what's the personal health like, what's the mental health like. You can't do that. What you do is you say, this is what I want, this is where I want to go, this is how I want to do it. But understand that it is not always going to be rainbows and butterflies. Sometimes you're going to have moments where you're not at peace, where things aren't exactly how you want them to be. You just keep that shit moving, and you make sure that you remember that why and keep going in that direction.
No, for sure. While we're talking about headspace, I kind of want to pivot a little bit into everyone's fitness journey. And I got to give you your flowers, Jonahs, because right now you look completely different. Even I remember when we went to the wedding, you were looking good. You were like slimming down.
Let me get an old picture. Where am I going to see an old picture? Let's see.
We got to put it up. We got to put them up in the show for sure.
Yeah, throw something up. Throw something up.
But
oh man, my fitness journey has definitely been interesting.
Yeah, he's done a solid transformation.
Okay.
And so to ask, right, the question is, I remember when I was going through it, there was a point where I was in the same space. I wasn't like necessarily playing video games and stuff like that, but I was lazy. I was undisciplined. I was going out to eat every time. I was eating whatever I wanted. If it was pizza all day of the week that was for dinner, I would eat it. Like I didn't have that self-control to say, no, let me eat a salad. Let me, eat a high protein meal. And then I remember I got to a point, because it was COVID. Then Kirsta got pregnant, so I was, feeding in with all her indulging and stuff. But then they got to a point where I looked in the mirror and I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I didn't even recognize myself. And it's funny because I looked at pictures of the wedding and I was fat, bro. I was like, that was when I was peak. Like, I was like 260 something. And I look now, I'm like, holy fuck. And I'll post those pictures too, so people can see the difference. But so for like, the question is, what was your headspace when you were at, let's say, like your heaviest, and what did it take for you to transition out of that and get discipline into your fitness journey?
Yeah. So two things. So I'm not going to go back into like my whole fitness journey. I will say this. So it was May 2021 when we went to that wedding. I had lost probably like 35 pounds. I was working out. I was in Austin, so the weather was great. And I was just playing basketball all the time. After that wedding, hard rebound. Whatever weight I lost, whatever fitness I did, stop going to the gym, stop anything. All
You hit
physical
the goal.
activity.
You were like, all right, it's cool. And
I
then you
hit the
went back to your
goal.
old
I
ways.
did the weekend in Mexico. I lived
Yeah.
it up. And then it was summer and I was eating barbecue every day. I was eating breakfast tacos, like completely lost all discipline, all self-control. While I was making progress in my career and, you know, going in the right direction. So I thought I was on the right path. Then November of that year, I lost my grandma. So it got a little bit worse. I only say that is because, you know, you go through trauma. Everybody responds differently. Mine was to eat.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people are comfort eaters. They don't even know it.
Exactly. So things got a lot worse, a lot worse. Next thing you know, I was back at 240 something, which I'm 5'11", and it was all in my gut, all gut. Just had a beer belly. And then it wasn't, and this is why it's like, it's so important to have a support system. And we're lucky to live in a digital world where I was watching my friends work out back home, specifically you, Cesar. Watching my friends work out, watching my friends being, you know, while I'm at my heaviest and I'm living in tropical weather, all of my friends are back home in winter, but they're grinding, you know. I know how cold it is out there. I see you grinding, posting, sometimes 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. I'm up. What am I doing? I'm just laying in bed with the phone on my stomach, really like, I only paint that picture to say it was those moments of me just, you know, self-reflection, looking at someone like you, Cesar, who you're taller and bigger than me, but I'm like, even though he's bigger than me, I don't think he can. I still have work ethic. I can still grind. I can still push myself. You know, it was those little moments of just watching you kind of. And then I remember you started training for the marathon. That was a real pivotal moment. Because I was like, oh, I got to get my life together. At that point, I had moved to Miami. I'm like, I really got to get my life together. I'm over here walking around multimillionaires, billion-dollar buildings, you know, and then I'm in the worst shape of my life. And then I'm watching you and your brother train constantly. And I just got like right back to it, which I thought I was. I disclaimer that. Because I thought I was back in it, you know. I'm like, oh, I'm back to it. I got my routine. Probably lost like a few pounds, 3, 4 pounds, 5 pounds, because I really wasn't taking it serious. I was going a couple times a week and eating whatever I wanted. And then in January, you, your brother, your entire family, is actually where I met Charlie for the first time. And you came to run the marathon. And that was just insane moment for me, you know, like it really clicked. I'm like, these dudes really, I just watched them train for 6 months. And now they're really doing this marathon, which took, you know, was thousands of people there. It was this whole event. It was my first time really experiencing it. And the real one pivotal moment, besides you and your brother running, because watching you guys cross, and I remember the moment running with you, sidelines, you know, it was insanely motivational. And I remember thinking, I'm like, I need to do this, or like I need to grind. I need a goal. You know, I had no real goal, and that's when I remember saying, like, I want to run a marathon at some point next year. I need to start training. And while I'm thinking that, you know, processing those emotions of like, I really got to get my shit together. I watch a father push his paralyzed son in a wheelchair past me. You know, everyone's cheering and I'm cheering also. But as they're passing by, I start tearing up, you know, just out of the sheer emotion. I had just watched you guys, you know, I'm just so caught up in that moment of like, I made my mind up, you know, I'm going to do this. I need to do this. And then watching him run by with his son, I was just like, you know what? I'm meant for more. I can do more. I don't have anybody to push, but I can push myself type of thing. And I'll say that from there, man, it was like a whole different ball game. I'm talking about going 5, 6 days a week. I'll show some pictures of Charlie because you don't remember my physique. But I went from a like sloppy 240. Right now I'm like 203. Started running every single day, 2 to 3 miles, started playing basketball, lifting, playing volleyball with friends. And when I tell you, like, I went from a 180, it's completely sedentary lifestyle to completely active, going to run clubs, you know, picking up new sports. And the whole thing is I'm irrecognizable in that sense because it's all mentality. What did I tell myself right before the marathon? My whole life, I hate running. I hate
Bro,
running.
you
I don't run.
I never ran. I did cross country, and then they took us. I think I don't even remember how long. It's probably like 3 miles of tryouts. And I was like, "Yo,
Yeah.
this is insane! Like, I can't. I'm not gonna be doing this." And I did a trial, and I never went back. I was like, "Hell no, I'm
Never
not a
went
runner.
back.
This shit
And
is
then
crazy. I'll just do
I
ball."
remember I said I'm gonna start running. And actually I'll give this tip to anybody who wants to run. Is an app called Couch to 5K.
Mm.
I downloaded the app. I think it's like $5, but it basically in intervals teaches you how to build up your running base. And the first workout is walk for a minute, jog for a minute, walk for a minute, jog for a minute, and it's guided. That's kind of what I needed at the time, was like some type of coach of like, go, stop, go. And that first day, man, it was like walk for a minute, jog for a minute, and I couldn't jog 15 seconds.
I had the same
I
exact
couldn't
experience. It's hilarious.
I couldn't jog 20
Wow.
seconds consecutively. I
Yeah.
could not do it. And it wasn't a mental thing. My body was collapsing. That I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is insane. But the whole thing is I had the guide in my ear, and I've made up my mind. I'm like, I'm gonna transform my life. Like, this is it. I'm gonna become fit. I'm gonna do everything I tell myself I'm gonna do. And I just kept following it, and these 15, 20 seconds turned into 30, 45. Next thing you know, it was like, hey, walk for a minute and I'll skip it. I'm like, I'm gonna go another 45 seconds,
Keep running,
Yeah.
in these little intervals. And this is why it's so important. It all became mental, because I think it was probably like a week in, I said, I don't care what this says. I'm just going to keep running.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I have a park that's like a mile from my house. It used to take me probably like 6 minutes, 7 minutes, like, not even a full mile. I want to say it's like half a mile, a little over half a mile. It'll take me 7, 8 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes to make it to the park. And then I remember one day I said, you know what? I'm not going to stop. I'm going to make it to the park. I almost collapsed, but I got there. I got there in like 5 minutes. And, these little wins that don't seem like much because it's just me and myself. I'm not racing anyone. I'm not putting my stats anywhere. I don't know what stat I would show off at that point. But it was just little things, because I would run 5 minutes nonstop and I would come back to my desk reinvigorated. I have a whole new mental capacity. I think of myself differently. I have more confidence. And those little things are affirmations. Then you have the external stuff, because what started happening, and this is why I think it's so important, the social aspect of it, because I started working out because of Cesar, because I'm seeing him post he's just running on the treadmill, running outside, and I started doing the same. I started like sending it to Cesar. We both have Apple Watches. We'll see our calories for the day. These are little things, the external factors that you don't really think about. But those little social inputs, I would post something, someone would write to me like, dude, you look great, because they just saw me last week. They're like, dude, you look awesome. And obviously it's the real one that counts is when your girlfriend or your wife starts complimenting you. And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm never going back, but it's just such a transformative thing. And like, it's one of those things like, how did I not start doing this 5 years ago? How much further would I be professionally?
Yeah.
How much further would my business be? Because it's all together. When I started thinking of myself better and becoming more healthy, I put myself on camera. I started making content. The immediate turnaround of making content is I started marketing myself. And inadvertently, I didn't know I was marketing myself. I thought I was just sharing stuff. But, people become interested in that. Like, hey, how come you're working out? Or that's a nice location you're at. Or what do you do for work? It's just like this big system, and like it all ties together. But if your mental's not in order, if your physical health is not in order, and nothing else really matters,
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think I get a lot of calls or a lot of messages about about things like that from people wanting to, oh, yo, man, you're a madman. You're always doing this, you're doing that. And yeah, I know that some of the stuff that I do is a little bit more on the extreme side, and I don't suggest that, hey, everybody's got to do that. But here's what I learned, and this started for me. I started running when I was like maybe 6 or 7 years old, like leaving the beacons and running around the industrial park, because shit was so bad at home that I just fucking needed to cry and run at the same time, right? So that I learned immediately subconsciously that had something to do with some stress relief in my brain. It was giving me something. I was getting something out of it, right? So then when I was in Florida, when I moved to Florida and I dealt with that stuff, because in high school I played ball, football, basketball, baseball, but I didn't do any running. Got to Florida during that year and a half. By the way, I'm I tell everybody 5'8". I'm like 5'7" and 3/4. Bro, when I was doing my thing, and listen, I got pictures. I'll show you. I'm like, we're talking 2001 in Lawrence, right? I got long hair, like here, fucking Jerry curls and shit in the back. Long hair, big ass length, papi chulo, right? Eating that pollo típico all the time. I weigh like 230, 232.
230
right? 230, bro.
That's crazy.
I got pictures of
crazy,
it. Now, I wasn't walking around like 230 sloppy. I was also lifting. So I was like,
yeah.
Bro,
that's the deception. Yeah. That's the deception, though.
It is. And
for
you know
me,
what
bro,
is?
that was always been my biggest issue. I'm a bigger dude. I'm 6'1", borderline 6'2", and I'm bigger. So like, I always felt like, I'll put the weight on well. You know what I mean? And that brainwashed me.
You know, it's an uphill battle because culturally, it's funny when I got really fit, right? When I got really, really fit and I lost weight and I went back home from Missouri to visit my family, my mom was like, mira, muchacho, pero tú tan enfermo. So here's the gist of my story. The gist of my story is this, I'm a firm believer in discipline, right? Structure and discipline. I'm not disciplined on all facets. I have some weaknesses in my life on some capacities. But when it comes to, and this is something I'm blessed that my wife is also ride or die about this. When it comes to fitness and wellness, now, number one, all the data shows that there's nothing better to reduce stress, anxiety, health issues than moving your body, right? That's number one. If you really want to take it to another level, move your body out in nature. That takes it to a different level, right? Because you get to like literally no phone, no nothing, just go out to nature for a little bit. But on the big scheme of things too, if you look at it from a business standpoint as well, I find it very difficult to take any advice from somebody in a fitness capacity who's not in shape. Or someone like, I know that there are cats out there that are killing it, and you can look at them and be like, damn, dude, you unhealthy as a mother. To me, a life well lived is a life balanced on all pillars, right? And so it's got to be all of it. And so my thing when it comes to personal wellness and fitness and all of that stuff is, again, I go back to that. We have a motherfucking duty to take care of our bodies, because you can't put that stress on your family later, bro, that you have diabetes because you didn't want to move your body, because you wanted to game all day and have that extra, whatever, with Gucci frito, whatever the hell you wanted to eat. It's a response. I get it. We all fall off. I get it. We all drink our 12 Heinekens or whatever that happens. But at the end of the day, there is a duty and a responsibility to make sure that your health is right, because your kids are watching you, your nieces and nephews are watching you, your family's watching you. It's a responsibility. And I think that anybody that's listening or watching this, bro, start where you're at. Meet yourself where you're at. That's cool. That's fair. But ain't nobody going to come and beast nothing for you. You got to get your ass up and do it yourself. And if you got things that may, your knees hurt, well, start swimming. Oh, you can't swim. Okay, start rowing. I don't know. Whatever it is, just stop with the excuses and do the work, because it's what's required to be able to be the best version of yourself. When you're healthy, bro, that mind is moving sharp. It's moving sharp,
And it's crazy too, because when I got into that whole fitness journey, the running, I did not expect it to be such a mental unlock on discipline and my mindset. Like, I was wired, I felt sharp, everything was good. But at the same time, I always tell, like I told Kirsa this the other day, there's no better feeling than, I remember the beginning when I'm running and I'm getting a little bit better, but I still look the same. So I was like, what's the point? And a lot of times my fitness journey always ended because I was kind of going to the gym, half-assing the diet. And so I still looked the same. But I remember when one day I had to do a progress pic, because this was when I was doing 75 hard. And I saw like the abs, bro, were starting to come out. That feeling is unmatched when you're like, before I used to look in the mirror and be like, ashamed a little bit, like, damn, like you're chubby, whatever, you got some work. But when you look in the mirror, you're like, damn, you're looking good. You're about like you almost have a six-pack. That feeling is so invigorating. Like, and that's the biggest thing that I always wish I can pass on to people. I'm like, you don't know how good it feels to come from a place where you feel ashamed of your body, and then you just put in the work knowing that you did it, because there's no shortcut to it. You know what I mean? The only way to get there is putting in the work. And then you add that euphoric feeling of like, wow, I look good. Look at how, I can see my muscles. I can see the definition. That thing is so unmatched.
That
And you just
requires
become
deposits though,
addicted to the
too.
progress.
For
Yeah,
sure.
man.
But I mean, it requires deposits, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the biggest the shit that pisses me off the most. I'm like, bro, you gotta make the deposits, man. You're not gonna see it tomorrow. You're gonna see it
No,
in 3
100%.
months. When I go race here in 2 weeks, the work was done. It was done 2 months ago. Thank God, my boy Cesar over here inspired me to do 75 hard, because now I'm in the best, maybe not the best running shape, but the best. Like, one of my arguments has been over the last 2.5 years, and I got into the Ironman game 3 years ago. And I got into it. I have no business even being any good at this shit. Like, I didn't fucking run or do none of this shit in college or nothing. And I'm going up against former college swimmers, but I would say to my wife, I'm like, man, if I could just chill the fuck out with the drinking for a little bit, I could drop a few more pounds and I could be ready, right? Bro, do I not get on the scale this week and I'm at the number where I've been dreaming to be at for my big race? I got a little pressure, right? Families coming through, all that good stuff. But also, I'm amongst beast mode here. This Arizona shit here with these cyclists I'm riding with.
No joke.
Bro, this is so my thing is, and I'm gonna come at you guys a little heavy with this one, but I ain't dishonoring myself and I ain't dishonoring my family. And wherever I'm at, I'm coming for mine. And if that requires me having to let go of the booze for a little bit, or me having to let go of the fried food for a little bit, because I gotta feel good every 2 seconds, then I'll do it. Because when I cross that line, whether I have a good day or a bad day, I overcame something. I told my wife this morning, bro, I'm pretty proud of myself, man, that I ain't caught up on this fucking drinking every weekend shit anymore. Like, that was bothering me. I'd get hangovers for 3 days in a row, and I'd tell myself after the first day, yo, chill out. But then it'd be Saturday and I'd do it again. And I'd be like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah, I feel like safe to say we all been in that cycle.
That's it, man. That's it. Drinking is one of them. It could be any other vice, but that's why I kept going back to the audit.
Yeah.
That just what you mentioned. Just take a moment. You're like, one, become addicted to the progress, because that's exactly what Cesar's talking about. Whether it's physical, someone says something to you, you notice it. Any type of progress, especially long-term progress, where you're not seeing it after a week. It's 3 months, 4 months of running, lifting, eating good, and then you see the result. That's what you're addicted to. But also, it's taking that audit of like, yo, I haven't improved my lift, my running, or my weight in months or weeks. What am I doing wrong? And it's just those little moments of like, let me cut out drinking. You know what? I eat a little bit too much, or whatever it is, because next thing you know, you cut out one thing and you make huge gains. And you're just like, oh man, thank God I took a moment to just reflect, to just be like, hey, what am I doing here? And no one knows you better than you, maybe your partner. And sometimes maybe that's what it takes, a little bit of accountability of like, hey, you said you were going to stop drinking and you're hungover for the third, just like you said, third time this week.
Yeah, it's true.
And maybe you don't see it yourself, but someone's saying it to you. Obviously, the person holds you accountable. It goes hand in hand, man. It goes hand in hand.
Yeah, you got to decide what you want more, right? Like, and it's true. You find, but this is all going to go back to, and Cesar, I want you to, ask your next question here, because I want to hear some other stuff about Jonahs. But the company you keep, homie, the company you keep, like, if you're not around, if I want to know how this dude is going 25 miles per hour and I want to be able to stay with him on the bike, I'm going to try to figure out what he's doing. I'm going to try to model that behavior, right? Well, cat that wants to go to the club every night on the weekends ain't doing it. It ain't going to get me to that success, right? So, it's
a testament too, because I just had a full circle moment in the sense where Jonahs was just reflecting on his journey and how he got started running because of what he saw me do. But I got started because of you, Charlie. So you're literally, we're all linked together in that sense where because of what you did, it inspired me to do it. Because I remember that first thing, I went to the Boston Marathon. I saw him do it, the emotions and everything like that. I don't know what it was. I was just like, yo, like, I want to do that. And I'm the type of person that if somebody else does it, I feel like I can do it too. Cause I'm just like, yo, he's human like me. I respect the process because he trained to get there. I know I'm not going to get there without training, but I'm like, I want to put in the work and I want to get, that outcome. So it's like, it's cool to see because that goes as a testament to the company you keep. If it wasn't for me meeting you or going to that, who knows where I would have been realistically.
100%.
Yeah, and the beauty about those kind of communities too is like that's kind of running community. Those communities saved my life, bro. Like they saved my life. They brought me in with acceptance. They don't care what my background is. They're just like, yo, you want to run? You want to get into this? What do you want to achieve? And so, you know, the reason why you feel those emotions is because it's real energy. Like when I'm nervous for you when you come to the Ironman, if I'm going to be real. Boston's I will say Boston is by far the most proud moment thus far the only thing that's going to even I don't think it'll compete with it, but if and when I qualify for Kona, Hawaii, right? Because that shit that's animal, right? That's different. But Boston was 10 years in the making. I failed 9 times. I quit. In fact, I told my wife here in Phoenix when I failed in 2019. And by the way, see how everything works? I kept failing, I kept failing. We came out of 2019 to Phoenix, Arizona to run the Phoenix race because it was supposed to be one of the flattest races and a good qualifier. Check it out. So we jumped into a VRBO with this guy who was coaching me back in Kansas City because he was having a women's retreat here. He lets us stay. By the way, the house, the VRBO we stayed in, same exact fucking neighborhood that I'm in right now, and I had no idea.
That's crazy.
Bro, tell me that ain't some shit. Like, we had no clue. So long story short, I didn't qualify at that race. And at the end of the race, I was like, I'm done. Like tears coming down my face. I'm done. I gave it everything I had. At the time, I ran like a 325 or something like that. I needed to run a sub 305. I'm like, I'm not even close. And, you know, again, support system. My wife's just like, all right, love, I got you. All right, you're good. And then the next day she's like, so what are you signing up for next? You know, and I'm like, damn it. All right, let's roll.
For sure.
No, that's incredible, man.
Yeah.
So Jonahs, I told him actually, we were texting earlier and I was telling him how the cool dynamic of the show that we have going on is where I'm a younger person on the path to my goals and you're more established. You're still on your own journey. You know, everyone's reaching for more, but we have that perspective where you pour into me and help me get there. So we've had a few guests who have their own thing going on and they're more established and they're giving us that feedback. So I kind of want to get a little bit of accountability from Jonahs on what he's working on, what his goals are for the future for him to see kind of where that is. And then I would love to have a full circle moment later down the line. Let's say it's 6 months to a year from now, and we get to see, you know, where he's at now, where he's built his agency. So kind of to that being said, what do you have going on in your agency? 28 Digital is the name, correct?
Yes.
And what is your goal? Where do you see yourself taking it in the next 6 to 12 months?
I appreciate it. Really where we're at now. So right now, like I said, it's just me, my partner and I. So I handle basically everything. I do design as well, but I handle everything else when it comes to sales, marketing, even web development, the actual technical part of it, SEO stuff. And I know those are a bunch of terms and terminology, but essentially what's happening right now where I have my hand in day-to-day operations constantly. I do everything. You know, I wear multiple hats. The evolution of it, and we recently just launched the company, you know, in an official capacity. I say that because I've been freelancing under my own name, you know, just normal stuff, picking up gigs. And then we made the switch of like, you know what, we're going to become a company and really do this right. Onboard people, and I say onboard, build partnerships. So that was the first thing, is moving from a freelance operation by myself to an actual company. And that's really where we're at now, where we're officially a company, and that's how we're represented. That's how we move. The next step, and really what the next 6 to 12 months, is me transitioning from a web developer, you know, hands-on role to a product manager role. And really what that entails is just becoming high level, and then owning delegation. My goal right now is just in 12 months, I don't want to be doing basically any of the work that I do right now. Not that it's a bad thing or that I hate it or I'm avoiding it. It's just I'm evolving past it. I think I'm at that point where as fulfilling and as fun as some of this stuff may be, I'm a little bit past it and I'm ready for the next level. And that next level is the actual management of the company, of what we're building, you know, delegation, hiring people, building a team. being able to offer these opportunities to people who are up and coming, whether they're graduates or come from like an untraditional background like myself. So that's really the next level for me of now that we've launched this company and, you know, we have some traction, is really getting to the next level of building a team and then basically automating or creating a system where I don't need to operate the business. You know, because one, that's how business should be. It should run without me. It shouldn't need me to operate. It shouldn't need me. Obviously, that I'm the heart of the engine and I'm pushing it forward and I'm leading the way. But the idea is just to become hands off in that sense. Because if you can build something like that, in my opinion, that's really a real sign of success, of entrepreneurship, of building a business. Clocking in when I want to clock in, you know, you really don't have a 9 to 5, you have a 24/7. But to make myself a boss in the capacity of being able to take time off and know that my business is running fully, having 28 Digital be its own thing, its own brand outside of my name. You know, these are things that I constantly dream about, that I'm not, and not only dreaming about, putting plans in place of like, how am I going to get there? What systems do I need to get there? And I'm very realistic with those because I don't think you can bullshit your way around these things.
Yeah.
Early in my career, you know, picking up gigs here and there, you know, for a couple $100, like for a friend, you know, you can miss a deadline or two, or maybe you need a little bit more time. As I've evolved and I've picked up bigger projects, worked with some real estate companies, you know, this is business.
Yeah.
Missing deadlines is money. If what I'm doing is affecting their bottom line in any way, if I'm not adding value to them and making their life easier, then I'm really not fulfilling my purpose. And yeah, that's my next level, is just delegation and really growing this. And I say that wholeheartedly to whoever is listening. Reach out if you have any interest of anything of this capacity. I say that because, like I said, I come from a very untraditional background, and I did have some helping hands and people who gave me advice here and there, but I really didn't have any type of mentorship or like real guidance of like, don't do this, do this. So yeah, that's my the next step.
So let's take it Barney style. Who's your consumer, and what are you doing for that? What are the services you can provide to your ideal consumer?
Oh,